This episode of Simulation Nation is brought to you by Avkin Incorporated, your one-stop shop for everything wearable simulator and standardized patient.
I want to thank everyone for joining us for this episode of Simulation Nation. Today we have a very, very important guest. Her name is Deb Tauber, and she is a consultant. She runs Innovative Sim Solutions, and I'm going to let her talk about that a little bit more, but you may have seen her logo with a little beacon of light and a lighthouse out there, and she does some amazing things to help simulationists. You see my sign behind me says Simulationists support simulationists, and Deb is the quintessential simulationist that is supporting other simulationists in what she does. Today, we're going to be talking a lot more about accreditation because she is on the accreditation committee for Society for Simulation in Healthcare. And you know, if you've listened to my other podcasts, that it is a passion of mine that we are sharing some of the really key essentials to being successful with accreditation, and also kind of taking some of that sting or that scare away from actually going for it. So today we have some questions prepared for Deb in advance, but I'd also like her to introduce what she does through her really, I would say, passion project of Innovative Sim Solutions.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me on. I'm honored and humbled. You know, it's different being in the hot seat than.
Yeah, she does a podcast too, and I've been on her podcast, so we're turning the tables here.
Flipping the table. Yep. So, my name's Deb Tauber. I'm the founder of Innovative Sim Solutions, and Innovative Sim Solutions does three things. One, we have the free podcast, The Sim Cafe, which we have close to 150 episodes so far, and it's over 100,000 downloads in 94 countries. Now that the 94 countries is the thing that really shocked me, because I don't know if I could name 94 countries. I know I couldn't.
Yeah, so, you're right.
So we do that, the podcast, and then and if you're interested in being a guest, reach out to me. I'd love to, interview you. Jared Jeffrey's my partner in crime with that. The second thing I do is consulting. So I help people, essentially, if you're starting a new sim center, if you want to revamp your other one, if you're looking for help with accreditation, I totally enjoy that journey, because I liken it to helping someone train for a marathon or triathlon. It's a long journey, but it's so doable. All you have to do is, it's really so much fun. And after people do it, they are so happy that they've done it and so proud of what they've accomplished. It's just a great journey, and the pursuit of excellence, right? SSH Accreditation, understanding the process, is what we're going to talk about today. And then the third thing that we have is some courses online to help people get a shared mental model of understanding simulation, and
that's on the Healthy Sim website.
Yep,
correct?
That's on Lance's site, on the Healthy Simulation website. Yep.
Yeah. So I just want to go back a little bit to the accreditation work that you do to help other simulationists. I remember when we were going for accreditation for a nursing program, not for our sim program, but for our nursing program, having someone come in who was an accreditor and helping us walk through, how an accreditor thinks through this, or what they're looking for, or what are the key things. So as we were preparing it, we really had that mindset of, what are the important things that we're hitting on, or what are the things that we need to do before we even ready, right? Or what mapping do we need to do, or whatever it was. And it was really, I don't want to say it took the work out of it. It didn't, but it allowed us to be focused on the things that were really important, the key elements. And I think that, again, that idea of having someone who is on the accreditation committee, of course, if you are consulting with another school, you would not be on their accrediting committee, because that would be a conflict of interest. But there are other people on the committee. So if you're interested in having that, Deb does provide that. And I think I have talked to several people that are in the midst of accreditation and would love to have that as a resource. So I do want to make sure that gets out. And can you talk a little bit about how long you've been on the accreditation committee for Society for Simulation in Healthcare?
Ooh. Oh man, I wish I had my CV in front of me. I want to say,
I'm sorry.
no,
That was not a planned question, so I apologize. I just wanted to,
no
you've been on
worries.
for at least 5 years that I know
Oh,
of.
since 2013, I've been a reviewer. We call them site
Okay.
reviewers. And then I was invited to be on the council. So I serve on the Accreditation Council, which is just, we do a lot of amazing work trying to help people realize that this process is simply that. It's just a process, and it's not anything that can't be done. We are here. All of the reviewers are here to serve you and to, just like your motto, simulationists, support simulationists. We're here to support other simulationists and help them, on the journey.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to take it back away from the fact that there is requirements. I mean, there are things that have to be done, but I think the idea is that we are trying to establish the simulation community as a reputable community. And we are also trying to add some regulatory or accreditation, pieces to this. But at the same time, the people that are doing your site review, the people that are on the council, are people that have walked a mile in your shoes. They understand what it's like to be a simulationist. There is no, pulling the wool over their eyes or your eyes. It's really just a matter of, how can we help? And that I told Deb, I said, that was really what I wanted the message to come through loud and clear. When we went through accreditation at the site that I used, my former employer, it felt like an arduous task, but at the other end of that, when we did it during COVID. So at the other end of that virtual meeting was smiling faces and support, which I wasn't expecting to see. But it was exactly 100% that. I felt almost, that they were there to come alongside me. So I really, again, want to get the word out about this and take some of that stigma away, because I think, as you mentioned in our pre-talk, that, when JCO was coming, we were, everyone was on high alert, if you were a professional and wanting to make sure that you had every right answer. And, everybody had been, the keys were locked up for the, for the narcotic box or whatever it was. I'm obviously dating myself because that's way different than it is now. But we had a lot of things that we had to keep in mind, and we needed to make sure everything was done. This is different. And I want to make sure we get that message across today.
Yeah. To your point, I love that you're comparing it to the Joint Commission, and most people are familiar with them. They accredit hospitals, and, they've been doing this for 73 years. They were established in 1951, and they have a reputation that they have more of a white glove approach to things. Whereas, as a reviewer for accreditation, we understand that every center is different and unique, and how your center works is how your center works. And we just want to support your center to work as, good as it can. There's 22,000 hospitals in the United States alone that have been accredited by the Joint Commission. There's only under 300 centers in the world that have been accredited by SSH. So if you think about how, being on the cutting edge, do you want to be one of those places that is associated with excellence in simulation? And what are the values? You have quality assurance. You have improved educational clarity. You have enhanced regulation. You have enhanced learning. It gives you a competitive edge, and you have a global recognition. Those are just a couple things that, reasons why you'd want to do it.
If you look at the way healthcare is, we are very regulatory driven, right? I mean, you get your nursing license or your medical license or whatever license you're carrying. That comes with a badge of honor. You've put some work in there. And you also have something to show for it. And I think it's the same idea of going through this accreditation process. So I agree. It does set you apart. I remember when I got my advanced certified healthcare simulation educator and found out I was one of only 83 people in the world that had it. It really did make me feel as though I was standing out as someone who really had put in the time and put in the effort and really, again, had something to show for it on the other end. It's a labor of love at the end of the day for me, and I'm sure for you as well, and many people listening. But it is the idea of having your sim center stand out, people that are becoming wise as far as people that are consumers of trying to find the right school and things along those lines, having that accreditation is just going to be an extra badge. I think some days school boards of nursing are going to be looking for that to add to the legitimacy of the simulation that you're doing. So there's lots of good motivations to do it, but it does come with some time and energy and effort for sure. Now, you mentioned some of the benefits, but I know when we were getting ready to apply, there were so many different options of choices. I don't know what you would call it, what sections to be accredited for. So can you talk a little bit about that, the different options, and what do most people usually apply for if they're kind of new at this? Because I am figuring that most people that are listening to this are probably fairly new.
So if you're new at this and you're just a brand new center, you don't have any data, you haven't even opened your doors, you can actually seek accreditation. It is called Provisional Accreditation. So you would make sure that you had met all of the core standards that are necessary, that has to do with your staffing, the way that you have who reports to who, your strategy.
Hierarchy.
Yes,
the hierarchy.
Thank you for getting that word for me, hierarchy.
Yeah, no problem.
And it has to do with your mission and vision. What is your mission and vision? And, how do you do all these things? That's the core application. And then going for provisional. So this is provisional. You can do this without having even students in the door. You would need to have how you're doing your simulation. So it would be, you could go for teaching and education. So there are different areas that you can apply for an accreditation, but going for provisional, which lasts for 2 years, is a real nice way to get started without having to have all your data points. And it's a nice thing to say, we're already provisionally accredited by SSH for simulation.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you? Do you have any questions on that? Did that?
Well, I want to clarify something. So if you become a simulationist, and I love the word simulationist, it wasn't something that was out when we first got started in simulation, but I love being able to identify what we do with that title. But if you become a simulationist for the first time, it takes 2 years of experience before you can even apply for your certified healthcare simulation educator. So the difference is that here you can have that provisional, and what it does is it makes you kind of lift every rock or think about every piece of what you're doing before you even start, to make sure that you're ready to go when the sim center opens. So that's a provisional, and what happens in 2 years is what the accrediting body asks of you is that you're collecting data over time, so evaluating your simulations, and then that data is being reported out. And if they were to collect that two years of data, that they were able to get, is it teaching and education or teaching and learning?
Thanks. You got that right about the provisional. So you can apply for, there's actually different areas that you can apply for. Assessment, which means you're demonstrating the ability to do assessment in simulation. Research, once again, teaching and education, which we just talked about. Systems integration. So say you're a big system and you are with a hospital, and the hospital has a sim center. So it's a systems integration and has to have, back and forth information from the simulation center to the hospital, and all those things need to line up. And then fellowship, that's a new one that we have, is if you want to be a fellow, and we can accredit you in fellowship. And there's talk that there might even be more areas to become accredited in the future.
That's exciting. Yeah. I mean, again, there's lots of options. You don't have to choose research. You only have to choose one of those for accreditation to be considered accredited by SSH. But obviously, some of the larger centers or some of the centers that have, multiple different campuses, they may be going for some of those other options. But the first one is really the teaching and education module if you're a fairly new beginner.
I think that would be fair to say that it's the most common.
Yeah.
Provisional, and the most common, even first accreditation, like if it's your first accreditation, that you would go for core and teaching and education. Obviously, there's
Gotcha.
always, some centers that are overzealous and they might go for teaching, education, research, assessment,
Yeah.
systems
Yeah.
integration, and fellowship at one time, which is a lot of work for the program. So to start out with something that's more manageable, kind of a bite-sized piece, which you can actually, go back for later, like, because as reviewers, we really want to help the simulationists. We want to show you what you're doing great and say, hey, do more of this. We see this as an exemplary practice. Maybe we'll bring this up to other programs. And then if there's an area that they want help with, an area that they're struggling with, we love to, help them find solutions for the areas that they might be struggling with.
Yeah. And I don't know if they do it every time, but for our accreditation, they asked us, what help do you need? Where are the things that you feel as though you could really make improvements? How can we, like you said, how can we support the amazing things that you're doing to grow to that next level? And to me, that was like, oh, they're on my side. They're here to help. And I thought that's really amazing. And again, as you said, they were also pointing out the amazing things that we're doing. I think as simulationists, we're pretty isolated. At least I felt isolated. I don't know. Maybe there's a lot more sophisticated sim programs, and I know where I used to work, it's definitely more sophisticated than it's now. But we don't have any way to really compare ourselves. And the first time I had an opportunity to compare what I was doing to other really amazing programs was when I became a part of the NLN Simulation Fellowship, and I was with a cohort of 19 other individuals that were doing simulation and just learning, what they were doing. And again, I call it my stiletto network. It's a book if anybody's interested in finding, but it's just a group of people who are there to cheer you on. There's no competition. I did this in 2015, over 2015, 2016. And there's still people that I got an email from one of them saying, hey, I'm getting ready to do my dissertation. I wanted to reach out to everybody. Here's my idea for the research project. What do you think? We're still bouncing ideas off of each other. And it is just, it's a very uplifting group. But the idea behind that is that obviously the accreditation team was there for just a short time, but it felt the same way. We're on your side. We're here to help. What can we do to encourage you to do better, more things that are than what you're doing that are great.
Right.
And being able to compare,
right. Some programs are struggling with resources. They want to get, more manpower. So when we do our report, we might suggest that perhaps in the future they look to increase staffing, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly, we were, I think as simulationists working in a sim program, it's easy for you to identify where if we just had this, it would be so much easier or better. I hope everybody is saying that about our Avkin products, but even if they're not, but they can identify other ways in which they can really, again, take off in their simulation program. We know that our students really love the opportunity to do it. So let's help them do it in a better way. If somebody that's getting ready to apply for even provisional or just that core accreditation, what would you like to tell them? If you could give them a message, what would you like to say to them?
Become familiar with the standards. So on the website, there's a whole section on standards, and if you like to do things on the computer, you can keep it on there. If you want to have printed out and have a copy of it in front of you for whatever areas that you're going for. So the standards, they look like this. Like I have them printed up in front of me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the teaching and education accreditation standard is called the companion document. So that is what you want to become very familiar with. And that will give you actual examples of documents that you need to provide, things that need to be in the application, requirements. So you need to be familiar with that. Once again, there are so many resources out there. There's so many people that really want to see you become successful in this. Reach out to there's paid staff from the Society for Accreditation. So it's Kristen Gadledge, it's Lizzie Brown, and it's Betsy. Betsy changed her last name, so I'm just gonna say Betsy Halsworth. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But they are so incredibly helpful. We all want you to succeed in this.
Yeah, I will say what we did was we printed out those standards and we put it kind of in an Excel file. And we had people on the team that were not even working in the simulation center, but there was things that they could help us with. So I can remember one of the things was we had to put in some safety features about what to do if there is a fire in the facility. Well, I don't need to write that, or, my other simulationists didn't need to write that. We already had standards within our school of nursing. So we used those same words and, made sure that it covered the questions. So we went through piece by piece and assigned it to different people. We had a group of, I think, 6 or 7 people, half were simulationists and half weren't. And we broke it up into pieces. And then the director of the sim lab read through it all, to make it one voice for the final piece of it. So, it's kind of, you mentioned the idea of like training for a marathon or a triathlon, or the other like analogy could be like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? One piece at a time, one bit at a time. And I think that really helps to make it feel a little less daunting. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about that?
No, yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head with that. It's getting your core people to have a shared mental model, right? And how can you do that? We're all simulationists. We all share the healthcare simulation dictionary, right? We have a taxonomy, a language that is, takes us further. We have the code of ethics, right? All those things. So having that group of people that are committed to it. So this, I will tell you, if you are a program of one and you're going to do the whole thing on your own, it's going to be a really difficult challenge. You want to make sure that you have a group of people that are going to surround you so that when the reviewers come, you've got leadership is supporting this initiative. We know it does, cost some money. A couple things. One, if you're going for provisional, it will only last for 2 years. So your provisional accreditation, you'll get the certificate that says SSH accreditation, a provisional accreditation that you can put in your center. It lasts for 2 years. When you go for full, it lasts for 5 years. So it's not one of those things that you have to do, you have to do it. You do it, and then maybe at the end of the year kind of review where anything needs to be changed for the future, and then work on 2025, this is what we're going to do. 2026, this is what we're going to do. You have to return an annual report every year after you've become accredited. But it's not, I've not heard of organizations complaining of any issues with that at all. We do have a rigorous process for becoming a reviewer, because we want to make sure that we have inter-rater reliability, meaning that if I were to come, or someone else was to come, that it's going to be similar. So we've been really working hard on that. There's if you want to become a reviewer, we are looking for reviewers. So if you come from a program that has been accredited by Society for Simulation in Healthcare, you have checked one of the boxes to a way that you can become a reviewer. And we really want people to be successful at that. So when I first started, it was more as a reviewer, it was kind of like we had to figure it out on our own a little bit. And that was intimidating in and of itself. But now we have a process, like kind of a buddy system. And if you were, if you were working with me and you were a new reviewer, I would say to you, well, the first thing I do when I do a review is I print up the informational packet that the program puts out. And it has, what are your 3 strengths? What are your 3 opportunities? What is your mission? What is your vision? Who are all the people that work for your program? And then you need a bio sketch in there. And a bio sketch isn't your CV resume. Your bio sketch is simply what you've done in simulation. So they're a lot more focused to simulationists. So those are some of the things that I would suggest that you are familiar with those. The companion.
And you definitely want to get leadership buy-in, because it does cost money.
Yep.
So before you even start, make sure that they know this is the cost for the application. This is the cost for the on-site work that's going to be done. I had somebody tell me that they went through the entire application process and then their leadership wasn't willing to support the actual application. And I thought, wow. I mean, again, it still helps them because they're
Yeah.
now, they now have a lot of their, policy and procedure in place, and they've thought through a business plan. But you definitely want to make sure that you have leadership support, because you will need some financial investment, or it needs to be part of your budget for that particular year.
Right. Right. And
Yeah.
you want to know that it's sustainable, that you're going to be able to, do it next year, that you're going to be able to provide the same amount of simulation experiences for your learners. How is your program sustainable? Do you have grants? Do you get your money solely from the learners' tuition? So that budget piece is important for the individuals who are applying to understand, right? Just
Yeah.
when they want to get some new equipment in the center, or new technology. Everyone's what's been interesting is in the last year or so, programs are doing so much more with virtual reality, and how does that fit into accreditation, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But we're
as the industry morphs and changes, then how do you support that with making sure that every aspect of simulation is being evaluated?
right.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've talked through kind of how you prepare for a site visit, and the idea of a buddy system. Is there anything kind of that maybe when you were doing a site visit that you thought, wow, that's an amazing. I know when I go visit sim centers, I always ask to look in their storage closets, because I just love seeing all of the creative storage uses that simulation programs have had. But is there anything like as you've gone through a site visit where you're like, wow, that's a really cool idea? Whether it doesn't have to be storage, but it's just my thing. But I think every sim center struggles with storage. That's what I usually ask. But just kind of some cool ideas or some things that you've seen that maybe you would never have thought of if you didn't get to do it as a site reviewer.
Oh, there are every single time that I go on a site review, there are things that we're learning. I mean, just, how some centers are using virtual reality to help their learners. And this is the way that our, new generation is going to be learning. They're going to expect goggles and headsets. And
Yeah.
as much as we may be resistant to it, if we didn't grow up with it, it is part of the future.
Yeah. I went to a lecture at Mayo's simulation conference, and Eric Bauman, who is really kind of one of the founders in AR, VR, or he did his PhD on it, at least. He's just very well versed in it. And he talked a lot about AR, VR. And even as I interact with people that are in the simulation world, what currently what I'm hearing where it's targeted well is two places. One is for kind of preparing them for a brick and mortar simulation, whether it's an SP simulation or a mannequin simulation, but it's like that preparatory work, getting them kind of in the mode and understanding, the different things that they need to look at or consider. Or it's also what he said was, think about a surgeon who is getting ready to do a knee replacement. If he can go in and use the Da Vinci tool in a simulated setting before he actually does the surgeries for the day, he's warming up, and so it's that skills like, reinforcement or skills review for a more expert practitioner that's going to be doing that skill for that particular day.
Right. Those high risk, low frequency events. How can you prepare for them? You need to be familiar with it, obviously, already, right? But how do you get prepared for, okay, what is going to be in, this chest tubes box when I open it up? Yeah, it's just a whole new way of thinking and learning.
Yeah, definitely. And and again, I think that there's value in AR, VR, and I think we have a long way to go with that. But I do think that people are really getting creative, just as we always have in simulation, creative with the next thing or the next modality. And so, but you don't have anything specifically that sticks out in your mind where like they had the most amazing this.
Oh boy.
I didn't ask her this question in advance, so she didn't have time to think through it. But I can say that I love the storage area at Brigham Young University. Their storage area is absolutely amazing. They've done some really cool things with basically like rolling there's in the doctor's office where they put the charts in.
Yeah.
They had rolling carts, and they put that was that like grip tape that you would put around, like if you got your blood drawn.
Yeah.
They would put different colored grip tape. So if it's like the trach sim is red, so the grip tape that was red was there. So it was just easy to identify where they needed to go. They had a really cool water distilling machine, so they didn't have to go out and buy distilled water. Just amazing, really, creative stuff. Boise State has a really cool way of storing their mannequins. I thought that was absolutely amazing.
Right.
And then the other place that I would say, if you're ever going to do site visits as you're preparing to build a sim center, go to California Baptist University. The person that runs their sim lab is a theater professional, and they have come up with props that, shrink down to nothing. So, they can convert they have a black box theater in there. They convert this black box theater into a rainforest.
Oh, how
so
cool
their students go out to, I don't know, Thailand maybe on a missions project. So they convert this black box theater and preparing them for what they're going to see, people in huts, like hearing the birds and, being in this really cool stuff. She's converted into the Titanic for a donor event. So it was like the black box theater became a Titanic. Really creative. And again, I encourage those visits. Those are just the ones that stand out in my head, off the top of my head, as far as really cool places to go. But, to plug the idea of being a reviewer, which you had already mentioned that you're looking for them, you do have the opportunity to visit some really cool places and get some ideas of, what other programs are doing. And it's not so isolating. And you get to even look at the curriculum that other programs are using, or how they're integrating simulation, maybe in some areas where they've identified problem areas. So again, I think that's a benefit if you do want to, if you're interested, it is something that's on the SSH website to look at what that would be.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to go to a center in Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
To do an accreditation site review in Hawaii. So that was just such a thrill and honor for me. They had some little robots, essentially, bots that were actually people from different parts of the country. So that was one thing that was really very interesting.
I've heard of that. Are you talking about like they're on wheels and it's like an iPad?
Yep.
And they can kind of go around the patient, right? So I remember University of Central Florida did that with, I believe it was Desiree Diaz, and she was presenting on it at a poster, and I was right across from her.
Yeah.
I think it was in Axel, but she was talking about they don't have pharmacy. So they had someone from Israel, maybe a pharmacy school from Israel, where they joined in the simulation. I thought, wow, like so cool to have that opportunity. And I'm sure in Hawaii, they just don't have as many resources or access to as many opportunities for different professions. So having from another part of the country or world, they can join in to the simulation. Really cool.
Well, I think that's where, essentially healthcare is going. It's recognizing that we're all so connected and that we do have resources available to us, really via Zoom. I mean, who would have ever thought prior to the pandemic that this would become a thing.
Yeah. And so our board, AVCAN, my board of directors, they always say, most of the time you don't start selling internationally until you're a bigger company than what you are. And I keep explaining to them that because the simulation industry started later, we are very interconnected. At the international meeting, there are people, you mentioned there's 94 countries that have downloaded your podcast. I mean, we're just very interconnected. And when they see our products at conferences, they're very excited about it and they're interested. And of course, why would we not want to support great education? There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through with selling internationally. You have to usually have a distributor in the area and things like that. But it is, it's almost discouraged by our board of directors, and I had to explain that the industry is just very, very interconnected and very, very internationally based, that, we had to support that in more than just the US.
And I think the simulation community is very generous. We are a charity of knowledge, right? Is Farousa Kandapur, my dear friend, always says, we are a community of knowledge. We share what knowledge is power, right? But it's really only powerful if you give it away. If you hold it all to yourself, what is that?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and that was really evidenced during COVID. I mean, you just saw people pouring onto these listservs saying, here's some information. What can we do? I know that in California, they had some simulations that were kind of behind lock and key. You had to be a member of the Alliance or something, and they just opened it up for anybody to have. Avkin put out some stuff with, basically because they weren't able to do even skills training, we send out videos and said you can have your students critique the work, because we had actual students doing the care on our products. And, so that was one of the things they could assign. But interestingly, we had interview with two different patients that had a tracheostomy, and about what it was like before they had a tracheostomy. What were they thinking? They both had, I think, tongue cancer, but they had to have a trach for a short time afterwards. And what had happened in the hospital when they woke up? What was it like while they were hospitalized? What was it like going home? And we shared that video out and just said, hey, this is a really great opportunity for your students to understand what it's like through the eyes of, a patient and their family member. Their loved one was there being interviewed as well. And we still have a huge amount of viewers of that video because it is so powerful and so valuable. But yeah, I think that idea of sharing is just, hey, let's not hide this under a bushel. I don't want just our customers that have the AvTrach to know. I want everyone to know what it's like in the life of a patient that has had a tracheostomy, that they can now share that lived experience with, novices that are entering the profession. So definitely agree with you on that one.
Yeah. Find your tribe.
Yeah. Yeah. And love every minute of it. I'll tell you that. It's just been, again, a passion project, and something that when I got first started in 2006, you just get started and start running for sure. Is there any other advice or kind of, parting words that you'd like to say to someone who's considering the application and, in the midst of it maybe, and trying to get through to on the other end?
I would just say, just do it, right? Just do it. It's really important. It's going to be well worth the journey. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to, Society for Simulation and Healthcare. They're really helpful. You could reach out to somebody like me, Deb Tauber, on LinkedIn, or, email Innovative Sim Solutions if you want some help. It's really and truly a great journey, and it will help bring your program together. And that is what most programs say after they've completed the process is, we really feel together as a unit, and can provide better simulation for our learners.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. One thing I will say that I didn't know until after we put the application in is, if there's something that's unclear to the reviewers, they can come back to you with questions or comments. So in other words, if you think, I'm not 100% sure that this part is what it's supposed to be, but I'm going to fill it out to my best of my ability. Now, you can always reach out to SSH and ask for clarification, but if you're just not sure, maybe it's 3:00 in the morning, there's nobody available, and you just got to get this done. They will come back to you if they have a question about the application that you filled out, to clarify something, or if they need more clarification. So it's not as if you, I think with grant writing, you have to have it in the perfect format and it has to be just right. And if it isn't, they just throw it out. That's not the case here.
No.
You will have an opportunity to get comments or feedback before they even come to do the site review, so that you feel as though you have a complete package and you've answered all their questions to their satisfaction before they even come on site. And am I saying that right? Because we had a virtual review, so
No, you're 100% right. Yeah. And if you, there's a certain amount of questions that'll be asked. And if you are going for a reaccreditation, you might not even have reviewers come back to your site. They might just do it virtually.
And then the other thing that I'll say that I think a lot of people that may be listening would struggle with is the business plan. So I remember, because I obviously had started a company, I was comfortable with writing a business plan. But can you speak at all to the business plan piece of it? What is it that they're hoping for as a reviewer? What do you look for?
We're kind of looking for a strategic plan. What is your 5-year, it doesn't have to be 5 years, but what is your 5-year strategic plan? What are you looking to accomplish over the next couple of years? Once again, we are not prescriptive. If you've seen one sim center, you've seen one sim center.
Yeah,
right?
for
There's,
sure.
like I said, under 300 centers in the world globally that have been accredited, but there's so many more centers that are out there. So, yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to make sure that they understood. Don't be. I'll actually we'll put in a link for my. I actually use it. It's kind of like a house. So it's kind of like the top is the mission and vision, right? So the top little roof part and the pediment, and then the pillars are kind of like your initiatives or the big things, and then your short-term and long-term goals are kind of what go down. So we'll put that out to help you. You obviously you can't send them the little house diagram, but it helped me to be able to break it down into smaller chunks. And then you can do your narrative on that. But we'll supply that as well. I don't know where I learned that from, but it was something that helped me get when I had to do my first strategic plan for AvCen. And then I did use it for the accreditation when we went forward with that. So we'll supply that as a guide along with the guidebook, but in case people are struggling.
Yeah, maybe we can give them links to the where they would go, because on the accreditation
for the standards,
because sometimes
right?
It's hard to find on the SSH site where you need to go, but it's all
Okay.
Once you've been there to that site, it's very it's very user friendly.
Yeah, and I will say that this is just, I don't want to brag, but we didn't have any comments come back at the end. We literally went through piece by piece. Now, we were told that's very unusual to not have comments. So I don't want people to be nervous that, they got comments and nobody else did. Like, lots of people get them, but it is literally, if you go through line by line and just put it like in a little file, and here's your narrative off to the side, and we put it all together. But I think that it's really important to take some of that scare out or the stigma out, and also to encourage teamwork. As you mentioned, people going through the accreditation process, I felt like we were all kind of finally cohesive. We all finally kind of, are in agreement, even having leadership, in agreement with what you're doing. I think that is a really huge benefit. But you don't need to do it alone. If you're doing it alone, that's probably a really big task. But it is worth it if you can get your team together and get some cohesiveness. And it doesn't have to be only simulationists. I mean, we didn't have that on our team. So
no, and I think people kind of struggle with that. They're like, well, they're not in healthcare. They're not, it doesn't have to be. A simulationist is a simulationist. You might not be in healthcare. You might be in IT, because just, just like, I think both of us worked in the emergency department for, I was in it for 25 years. And, a paramedic is your other hand,
lifeline.
Right?
Yeah.
So in simulation, IT is your other hand. You have to have the support. I have one center that I'm kind of working with now, and the woman is a librarian. She runs the center. It's brilliant, right? But
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, administrative people, I mean, we know now, right? It doesn't have to just be limited. Obviously, you need to have the healthcare disciplines, the faculty members to make sure that you're debriefing and all of those other things. But you'd still, it doesn't necessarily have to be that profession to run the sim program or to even help with the application process.
Right.
So thank you so much, Deb, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we are excited to get this, really kind of like survival guide out there with all of the links and resources. Again, those of you who have been in the game for a while, or if you're interested in becoming someone who is doing a site review, there is also resources of that. We'll put that in our in the chat or somewhere. Nate, the producer, will take care of where it goes. I don't know, but he'll make sure that those resources are available to people in case they're interested in looking into the requirements for that as well.
So if you are a program that is interested in becoming reviewed, becoming accredited, there's only 2 times a year that you can apply. And so
that's good information.
July
Yeah.
15th. So we just passed that one. So you would be shooting for, I think it's February 15th is the next one. So you would want to start to get your application in now, because you start working on it. Can take, several months to get everybody with the shared mental model.
Yeah. And I remember it took a little while to get our website to where it had the mission and vision statements on them and things like that. So it does take a little bit of time, but one bite at a time. That's all it needs to be.
One bite at a time.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And I hope this is helpful to you that are out there. Please put comments and questions in there. We're here to be a resource for you. And as we've said always, Simulationists support Simulationists. So we're here to help. Thanks so much.
Thank you.